The honourable member for Foothills.
The NDP-Liberal carbon tax coalition is delivering Canadians a Christmas nightmare. Canada's Food Price Index report showed that, on average, Canadians will spend $800 more on groceries this year. The Prime Minister's carbon tax is making a dire situation even worse. The number of food bank visits in Toronto are up 1 million people to 3.5 million visits, a 43% increase in new food bank users. Scurvy is on the rise. Food insecurity has surged more than 20%. All Canadians want for Christmas is a carbon tax election. When will this Prime Minister make that Christmas wish come true?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Let's get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the member opposite...
Order. Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary from the top, please.
Let's get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the members opposite cite says that climate change is the greatest driver of food price inflation. It's the same thing Sylvain Charlebois said when he came to committee recently, and the Conservatives have no plan to fight climate change. In addition, we stepped up over the holidays to offer Canadians a GST tax cut. What did the Conservatives do? They opposed. When we step up to help children across Canada get food at school, what do the Conservatives do? They oppose. You want to make Canadians Canadians a Merry Christmas? Step up.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Well, I guess it would take a Festivus miracle to have a serious Prime Minister who understands that when you increase taxes on farmers who grow the food, truckers who move the food, you increase costs of the food. But after 9 years of this NDP-Liberal government, this is the Christmas list Canadians face. Grocery prices up $800. Price of food inflation is up 36% higher in Canada than the United States. A quarter of Canadians are skipping meals. When will this Prime Minister grant a common-sense Christmas gift to Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
I would like to quote Mac Levesque, Chief Security at TD Bank, and he says, I quote, "Okay, enough. This is an outright lie, and I'm not in the habit of calling people liars. The report he's referring to does not mention that the carbon tax is a factor behind the $800 increase, and certainly does not say that carbon tax will cost families $800 more on food." That's coming from the Chief Security Officer at TD Bank, Mr. Speaker.
Money launderer, thanks.
Order. The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Under this Prime Minister, New Brunswickers continue to struggle and will now have to pay $800 more for food next year. After 9 years, the NDP-Liberal carbon tax has caused the price of groceries to skyrocket. According to Food Bank Canada, the number of people accessing food banks increased by 73% the last 2 years. Over 1 million Ontarians are relying on food banks. That's more people that live in my home province. Canadians deserve better. Will the Prime Minister agree that now is the time to call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A reminder that that member and all of the Conservatives have had an opportunity to support the work that we're doing to provide relief to families in New Brunswick and across the country. I look to the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. So far, 4 provinces have signed on, meaning over 184,000 kids will receive food at school this school year. More than 1.5 million meals, Mr. Speaker. They could support us with affordability measures should they choose to do what's right, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, not a single plate of food has been served, and 1.4 million Canadian children are living in poverty. The rise in the cost of food is a direct result of the carbon tax. The Prime Minister doesn't understand. If you tax the farmer that grows the food and the trucker that ships it, you end up taxing the family that buys it. Already the NDP-Liberal carbon tax has resulted in food prices increasing 36% faster in Canada than across the border. Will the Prime Minister finally give Canadians the carbon tax election now?
Although the chair couldn't quite make out the words, he did hear some people intervening from the far end of the chamber. It is really important, and this was brought up this morning in different meetings, but it's really important for members not to speak while other members are talking for no other reason than the respect that we could have for our members who use the translation devices so that they can hear what's going on in the House. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just because a Conservative member of Parliament makes something up doesn't mean that it's true. The Minister of the Environment has quoted the actual report that says specifically that the price on pollution is not responsible for the increase in food prices. But if the Conservatives were honest with Canadians and wanted to actually do something to help them with the high cost of food over the holidays, they could support our GST tax break for Canadians that is taking the GST off of essential items, including groceries, Mr. Speaker. If they were honest with Canadians, they would support the school food program that is feeding 184,000 kids. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Once again, the honourable member from Abbotsford, I'm just going to ask him please not to take the floor unless recognised by the House so that everybody can participate. The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, as we approach Christmas, there is no joy. A recent study shows that more than 21% of Nova Scotia households were food insecure in 2022, which is a 17% year-over-year increase. And about 1/5 of those people who are food insecure seek help through services like food banks. As a result, food bank use in Nova Scotia has skyrocketed. Food bank leaders say it's a perfect storm between the rising cost of living, unaffordable housing, and inadequate income. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election today so that Nova Scotians can feed themselves with dignity?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Food insecurity is a very serious issue, including in my home province of Nova Scotia. But, Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take seriously the question from the Conservative Party members when they are literally opposing a tax cut on food. This holiday season, we are putting a GST holiday in place to reduce the cost of food that people buy, including when they go out to eat at restaurants, including products that are not exempt at grocery stores. Mr. Speaker, I hope the honourable member will put his money where his mouth is and for once support a measure that is going to deliver meaningful financial relief to families in need.
The honourable member from Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Speaker, I suggest that member opposite go to the grocery store now again because essentials, grocery essentials, are already GST exempt, and the temporary tax trickery on foods such as sugary and salty foods and coated candy, popcorn, beer, and ready-to-drink alcoholic drinks are certainly not going to help food insecurity on behalf of any Canadians. And we continue to see that accessing food banks has increased 73%, and now more than 1 million Ontarians are visiting food banks, which is 6 times the population of Prince Edward Island. Canadians need relief. Will they have a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
It is absolutely clear my honourable colleague was not listening to the answer to his first question before he delivered his second. I said specifically that we are exempting tax on food that is not already exempted from the GST, including food that people may purchase at a restaurant. Mr. Speaker, what's interesting is the Conservatives are opposed not just to the tax cut on holiday gifts, toys for kids, clothing for kids, diapers, car seats, and food. They oppose the measures we put in place to reduce the cost of living when we cut taxes for the middle class, when we stop sending child care checks to millionaires so we can put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families. They just don't care about people. It's all politics.
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Member from Regina Leuven.
Obviously, that minister hasn't been to a grocery store in a while. The NDP-Liberal quadrupling of the carbon tax will cost Saskatchewan people $2,000 a year. Now, the latest food price report shows Canadians are being forced to buy less nutritious food because of the higher prices. This is Canada under that Prime Minister. To make matters worse, the average family will spend $800 additionally on groceries next year. Will these NDP Liberals finally do the right thing and call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide between their plan to tax everything and our plan to axe the carbon tax on everything for everyone?
Order. Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this feigned sympathy, these crocodile tears on behalf of the Conservatives is fooling no Canadian when the Conservatives had the opportunity to support measures that would help Canadians, measures like cutting their taxes, Mr. Speaker, they opposed. When we proposed a school food program that's going to help feed thousands of children across the country in their schools, Mr. Speaker, they opposed. Every time we try and help Canadians, Conservatives stand up and oppose that help, Mr. Speaker. Let us be clear. This Conservative leader does not have the interests of Canadians at heart.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, you know, we have this beautiful tradition in Canada. Children who write letters to Father Christmas. But this year, we've learned that Santa has never received so many letters from kids who are not asking for toys, but instead are asking Santa for food, scarves, winter coats and gloves. That's what children are asking for after 9 years of this Liberal government. A $500 billion deficit from this government. Are they really proud of their record? The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Labour. Well, Mr. Speaker, I am left speechless by what my colleague says when he just voted against the GST break. Coats, mittens, children's clothes, and many other things like prepared foods and restaurants would all benefit from that. And so this member voted against that, and believe it or not, he also is against school food programs. He doesn't want to fund breakfasts and lunches in schools. It's unbelievable, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Well, I am against a 10-cent break on a bag of chips. What a huge difference. Well, real talk, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of this government, 2 million Canadians are having to go to food banks. And food prices are going to go up by $800 next year due to this government's inflationary policies. After 9 years of this inflationary government with the support of the Bloc Québécois, is this government really proud of its economic record?
L'Honorable Ministre du Travail et des Aînés.
The Honourable Minister. Well, we are proud of the low rate of unemployment in Quebec, our record levels of foreign investment. This is a leading country on the world stage, and yet what does the member across the way say when we're offering a tax break on things like toys, Christmas trees, children's clothes, restaurant meals? Well, this member got up and voted against it. He keeps talking about affordability, but he voted against it. It's unbelievable.